What does it mean to integrate sport into life, and why is it really important, whether you're training for an Ironman or any other big goal you have? Why is it important both for your pursuit in sport, but also your pursuit of everything else that's important to you outside of sport?
I'll kick us off, yeah?
Yeah.
It's, I think that, for coaches listening and for athletes being coached, I think for the vast majority of people that participate in endurance sports or any types of events, this is the holy grail, actually. I think it's so important if you can define the right perspective. And I'll explain why. The vast majority of folks, athletes like you guys, the listeners, that enjoy taking on a challenge and participating in an event have got a whole bunch of stuff in life, massive competing demands. Many people are in a relationship of some kind, and many have kids. And so that's a huge and a hugely important part of life. And then the vast majority have a lot of demands from other aspects of life, work, travel for work, etc. So life is big. And we need to understand stress. That it all comes down to stress. Stress is accumulative, and so and you can't fake physiology. Those are two little key words or key phrases. So like stress is accumulative, and you can't beat physiology. You can't fake physiology. So, whether it's financial stress, stress around sort of confidence and self-image, travel stress, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, adding training stress, it all builds up in this big reservoir of stress. And as soon as it overflows, bad things happen. And so back in the day, not so many moons ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, at most 15 years ago, we lived very siloed lives. You had your family life, you had your work life, and then you did whatever you did on the side. And some mad people did marathons or triathlons. But life is life, and you can't integrate that. And so you can't, I don't think you can have a siloed impact and be successful over the long term. In other words, if you take a training program that for some reason or other you perceived as the ultimate training program and you just go about ramming it into life, there is going to be compromise. And that compromise is going to come from poor eating habits, lack of sleep, lack of presence with your family, lack of ability to focus in the workplace. There will be negative consequences. And so I think the only path for an athlete to be successful is to actually take an integrated approach. Otherwise, stress accumulates and we start to fail.
Yeah. I like that. I think something interesting you said that made me think about is sustained success, sustained performance, which is something we talk a lot about at Purple Patch, which is creating predictable and sustainable success, which is, do you think that, potentially an athlete could get away with having one really good race without integrating sport into their life? But that's going to be it. They're not going to be able to repeat that over and over again for year after year and live up to their potential year after year. Maybe they could have one good one and done race. It's like an artist having a one-hit single.
It's one hit wonder, yeah. And in fact, it's like if listeners have ever done a race and they finish the race and they think, oh my God, that was amazing, and thank God it's over, because for the last X number of weeks, it's felt like a monkey on the back almost. You've been living in a cage. By definition, it's not sustainable. Yeah. And if a listener has gone through a journey where they've been really committed, but they haven't got the performance that maybe their effort would suggest that they should yield, or they've got injured along the journey, kind of by definition, there's been an accumulation of too much stress somewhere. So, and look, injuries happen somewhere, but yeah, that's a part of it. You can get away with almost anything for a short period of time, but pretty quickly you start to get to diminishing returns, and that applies to anything in life. By the way, you can sleep under the desk and go on a work sprint for a few days or multiple weeks, but if you're doing that sustainably, something has to break, and ultimately you're not effective. I always like to think about it in not how much training can you do, because we always want to maximize training load, but we want to maximize effective training. And that sort of anchors, if you keep that in mind, then you get the magic word of really performance, which is consistency. So that's the long term, and it makes it more fun, makes it more enjoyable. You also have capacity to show up in other areas of your life. That's really important. So not only do you get faster when you integrate training into a time-starved life, you also get the net reward of actually having better energy, more cognitive function, able to be present, able to be more, to perform in the other areas of life as well.
I think that's really important. And that really ties to what our topic is today, which is Valentine's Day and relationships, and making sure that what you're doing in sport is actually enhancing all the other things that are super important too in your life, whether it be work or family. And I think that level of capacity, first of all, if you're not integrating sport into your life, not only will you not have capacity, but you won't even have the opportunity, because you're going to be out of the house every weekend, all weekend training. You're not going to leave yourself any time to even, let's say you had the energy, you don't have the opportunity to enjoy that energy because you're not even creating the time.
I just want to butt in, because I think that word, we both mentioned capacity. I think that's really important. Capacity is, it's just one of those throwaway words. Yeah, you've got to have capacity. Capacity is not a fixed entity. Mm-hmm. And I think this drives to the heart of the matter. When you get your own performance recipe right, and life is a living, breathing thing. Your demands ebb and flow. But when you get your recipe right, if you want to call it that, your training and all of your supporting habits, what occurs is you increase your capacity. So it's a very flexible concept. Mm-hmm. Conversely, if you are consistently burning the candle at both ends, you're compromising your sleep, your nutrition, you're overtraining relative to what you truly have sustainable ability to absorb and adapt to, you are diminishing your capacity. And that's a nice way to think about it, because you go back to your triathlon widows, you can go and train for an Ironman, and if you're not present because you're training so much, even when you return, your capacity is so diminished, your body might be there, but you're not going to be present.
Yeah.
And that's where partners, friends, business partners, and teammates start to really hate your sport. They start to see it as the enemy because they see what it's doing to you in many ways.
No, I love that. Before we move on to the next thing, one thing that I want to, something that I don't have kids, but I have a lot of athletes that do have kids. And there's a quote from a entrepreneur and endurance athlete, Jesse Itzler, who he always says, "I'm never too tired for my kids." And that's something that I try and take in mind when I work with any athlete that does have kids, that phrase of making sure that they're never too tired for their kids. And I think if, that is your North Star when you're coaching an athlete with children, you're going to do a pretty good job.
Pretty darn good job. I love that, because it's similar. Quite often, we spend a lot of time talking about purpose and why you're doing it, and a lot of athletes will come in and they say, I want to be a great role model for my kids. I want to be an inspiration. Doing an Ironman is or a marathon or something like that is you're showing them healthy, fit lifestyle and taking on a challenge, and all of that is true. But quite often, then they want to follow an approach and program in which they're effectively physically or emotionally absent from their kids. And it's like, no, they're not going to care about your finish time. They want to see that this sport is additive to your life. Mm-hmm. And actually the inspiration is, I do it and it's really enjoyable, but I'm there for you every time. And you need energy for that. I always talk about the fog of fatigue. And a certain Vince Lombardi and some other coaches said fatigue will make cowards of us all. But that's it. When you get accumulative fatigue, you can't function. You can't bring your best self. And that's in work, that's with family, that's everything. And so if you truly have an integrated approach in your training, it needs to be a catalyst to ignite a better self, a better version of yourself across life. And that's the only way that sports like this will be sustainable and ultimately valuable.